Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Alchemy Lab with me, Colm, Holland. Welcome, everyone. And I'm the author of The Secret of the Alchemist, which was published only a few days ago, last Friday. Here it is, Secret of the Alchemist. That's the original artwork on the wall behind me, if you're wondering what that wonderful painting is. And I'm thrilled today with my guest, and I'll introduce him in just a moment. But one of the things I wanted to say to everyone is thank you for watching so far. We've had amazing support, hundreds and hundreds of downloads, which is very encouraging. So we're obviously striking a chord somewhere. And of course, the Alchemy Lab is a metaphor ultimately for the transformation of our souls, of our own lives, to discover our own real true self. And the alchemists, of course, hid this truth in symbols and in laboratories where they talked about turning lead into gold and so on. And today we're going to talk a little bit about transformation. And one of the key things about transformation is that it starts with a journey. And our author today knows all about walks and journeys and long and short pilgrimages as well. He's done some long ones as well as some short ones. And he's been accompanied by various dogs along the way. And one particular dog we're going to hear about called Sam. And so it is with great pleasure that I would love to introduce David Berner. Hi, David. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure entirely. Award-winning author, lives just outside Chicago. Looks like the sun shining there today.
We got a little bit of sun today. It's a little overcast. We've had some hot days. Today's much better. It's much cooler, much more comfortable around here.
Well, in the UK, we say it's a little bit warmer today, and it's a little bit cooler today. But it is a quite beautiful day here as well. So I'm based near Glastonbury in the UK, for those of you who've not listened into this podcast before. David, there are some books that you've written. In fact, you've written several books, but you're also a professor. Professor of what and where?
Well, my background generally has been in journalism, and I worked in broadcasting for many, many years, and I teach journalism classes, documentary classes, associate professor at Columbia College, Chicago. I've always taught, even when I was full-time broadcast and journalist work, I've taught in adjunct form. And became a full-time teacher about 18 years ago, associate professor maybe, 10 years ago or so. And, I really enjoy teaching. I enjoy the classroom. These days, classrooms can be varied, can do very much what we're doing now in Zoom, but it's a wonderful experience. I've always enjoyed it. So
fantastic. Here you are, the author of award-winning, A Well-Respected Man, a work of fiction. Another book called Accidental Lessons, and I love this title, Any Road Will Take You There.
Yeah, I stole that from George Harrison, actually. It's a George Harrison song.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So just so you know, I keep this photo on my desk all the time.
Ravi Shankar.
So maybe we could talk about George. George is one of my spirit guides.
I can believe that.
And it wasn't my choice. It was his choice. He decided he wanted to be my spirit. I just said, maybe if we get time before the end of today's podcast, I'll bring you in. So, George has been an important part of my life for quite some time, but that's another story. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're writing at the moment? Are you working on a book at the moment?
It's funny that you say that. I tend to go with the Henry Miller approach to writing, is that work on one thing at one time. But lately I've been scattered in a good way. I finished a very unusual sort of memoir that's out at the publishers now, seeing if anybody wants it. It's a little out there, so I'm not sure it's going to be the right fit, but it's out there. But what I'm working on, I'm still been playing around with a new novel that it comes in fits. So that's usually not how I write, but I also started working on something about my late sister that came to me in a dream, actually. And it was a moment about kind of a scary, unsettling dream. So I started working on this project about a memoir of my sister, and and her life and what she went through. So that's what I'm working on. I don't usually have that many things going on at once. I usually work on one thing at a time, but for some reason it's like somebody's telling me I need to get this stuff done. So.
So a dream, was that a lucid dream, or was it a daydream? Was it a waking dream?
It was a night dream. It was a little startling. It awakened me in a bit of a fuss.
Mm-hmm.
My dreams tend to be very vivid. I usually tell people that my dreams are Lucy in the sky with diamonds kind of dreams. They're really out there and different and weird and colorful and sometimes disturbing, sometimes not, but they're very vivid. This one was a dream of my sister. She was in a terrible fit, laying on her back in my backyard, in my boyhood backyard. I later discovered that the night I had the dream was the same date that she died 4 years ago. So that kind of struck me. I said,
wow,
something's going on there.
Yeah.
So I started writing some notes down and playing with it a little bit. And I think I might have something I'm going to work on for a little while. So.
Oh, sorry to hear she's passed. That's
She was quite a lady. She was one of the most fun-loving people I've ever met in my life. That also got her in trouble. So it's just how it is.
Okay, well, hopefully we're going to find out all about her and her amazing life through your book at some point. So you've just published a book. Was that this last weekend that you published?
Well, if you're talking about Walks with Sam,
yeah.
Walks with Sam actually officially comes out September 1st.
Okay.
And it's in pre-order now, of course, and it's been out for a while. And we've been doing a lot of these kinds of things, talking with great people like you. I happen to have the book here too. Walks with Sam.
There it is, everyone. Walks with Sam. A Man, a Dog, and a Season of Awakening.
Yes. This is a book that actually came out of a blog. I started to do a blog that I really didn't think anybody would care to read, but it was just something I wanted to do. And it was about the walks I had been taking with my dog during my sabbatical time. And it was just, we were having some fun with it. And it started to come together as a sort of thematic thing. And after I had done many of them, I had a friend say to me, that's probably a book. And I don't know about that. But then I played with it a little bit more, and it became one. Because of the themes that came out of it that I weren't expecting, frankly.
Shall we talk about some of the themes? You say that your dog, and she was a bitch, yeah, it was a female, that Sam was a teacher of the perfect way to move in the world, which is beautiful. That's a beautiful phrase. So have you been able to incorporate, I've been reading the book, by the way. It's very calming. It's an interesting. Were you aware at sort of how the sense of peace and calm that it seems to initiate with the reader?
I can't say that I was. I'm one of those people who just writes what I write and feel what I feel, and if people like it, wonderful. I don't try to manipulate anything. At least I don't try to. Maybe subconsciously I do. I don't try to manipulate. I try to just lay it out there. And this is how this came about. The walks were calming. The walks were eye-opening in a way that I hadn't expected. The phrase that you mentioned, I appreciate you bringing that up. Dogs, and I learned this through some of the research, dogs don't really have a sense of past or future. They can smell something has been there and that something may be coming because their noses are so incredible. But they have no idea about the past and future like we do. They don't have a memory. They have an instinctiveness that sticks with them. We have that memory. We can recall something. Dogs don't do that. They live, and it sounds like a big cliche, but it's very true. They live very much in the present. In fact, Sam just walked into my shed.
Oh, Sam.
Sam, you want to say hi?
Yeah, fantastic. What a great synchronicity moment.
Yeah.
Is she there? Are we able to say hi?
Just walk back outside. I have a little building on my property where I write and stuff, and she was outside and she walked in to say hello.
She heard her name. The
But
star of the show.
Yeah, they very much live in the present. And, we were always telling ourselves, most of us are telling ourselves, that's the way to live, right? but it's hard for humans because we have this capacity to go back and forth and all over the place. Dogs don't really have a choice. They kind of have to live in the present. And, I think we can learn something from that. And I don't mean this book to be, I'm certainly not a shaman. I'm certainly not some kind of philosopher in any way. I just wrote this book in a way that, like, it opened my eyes, and I thought maybe it opened some other people's eyes. So.
But it's not just about Sam, is it? It's also about walking and the
Yes.
physical act. Do you want to explain a bit more about? So it's Sam, but it's also walks with Sam, and that's the key other side of this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I've always been interested in the sort of literary walker. To
name a few.
Yeah.
John Steinbeck.
Yeah, I mean, Wadsworth. There's been a lot of people who've done that. Thoreau. And it's sort of that way to go about the world and contemplate and be contemplative in a way where you don't necessarily have a place to be. I really made sure that these walks were not destination oriented as much as I could think. I just let them go where we were going. Some days were longer, some days were not. And the walking part was very important because, to me, I really think that when I need a break from the world, a good walk solves a lot. And I thought that would make a lot of sense to have Sam with me on those walks, not only for her well-being and exercise, but for me to sort of renegotiate what walking meant to me along with the dog. And I can't say that I'm a regular walker. I don't get up every day at 6 and walk, but I do. Like this morning, I was up at 6 o'clock and took about a half-mile walk just to clear my head in the really early morning. I love the early morning. And so, hey, walks about the famous, sort of spiritual walks out there too, right?
So you've done some fairly major spiritual walks then, David. You did the Camino de Santiago. Is that right? You did the pilgrimage.
I didn't actually do it, but I actually want to do it. I can't get anybody to go with me right now.
I know two guys.
Yeah.
I know two guys. One's me.
Wow.
And my son-in-law said only last week that a friend of his did the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, and that he did it in his teenage years. And my son-in-law, this guy was his best friend, he said, when his kids, my grandkids are grown up, it's one of the things we want to do. And so actually there's three of us probably. There's him, there's me, there's our grandson, there's my grandson, his son, who will be a teenager probably eventually and be ready for that. So, hey, just give us a call. And because we're going to be in great company, because that my book is all about The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and me uncovering the secret of The Alchemist. And the book that Paulo wrote immediately before he wrote The Alchemist is called The Pilgrimage, which is the route to Santiago, and the experiences that he had on that. In fact, I met him when I actually met Paulo. He'd not long since just been on that walk. And I saw a documentary not so long ago about one of the taverns that people stay in when they're doing the walk along the way. And they said that since Paulo published The Alchemist, the number of pilgrims taking the walk has gone up by about 400%. Yeah. So they're very grateful to Paulo. So you have to book in advance now.
Fabulous. I read The Pilgrimage before The Alchemist.
The Alchemist, yeah.
The old book of his called The Hippie.
Yes, so have I. Yes, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we could go. Well, we're not here to talk about Paulo Coelho, but I just wanted to. So you're in great company. So I want to talk to you about spiritual awakening specifically, David, if I may.
Sure.
We are in an alchemy lab, and we're on. We are doing some experiments. In fact, I've got an experiment going on. The regular listeners will know I'm always cooking up something in the lab. So I just want to stir this concoction I've got here. Now let me just check it. Oh yes. So this particular concoction, I'm going to ask your advice later. I'm creating a new potion, and I'm going to call it Liquid Compassion. because I figured I need more compassion for others in my life. And I know that spiritual awakening is one of the routes that we need to take to discover how to have more compassion. But we'll come on to that in a moment. But your book, uh, In the Walks with Sam, you are stressing the fact that that your experiences with Sam have become part of your own spiritual awakening. In
Yes.
what sense has that awakening manifested itself as a result of the walks?
Well, maybe one way to explain that a little bit is to give you just a little bit of my history. I grew up Roman Catholic, Irish Roman Catholic, very traditional, not hardcore, but certainly traditional. Went to Sunday school, went to school, did the whole thing, confirmation, all those good Catholic boy things. And there was a moment in time when my father, and I won't make this a long story, but my father became very angry with the church over his mother-in-law, who was not allowed to have her funeral at the church because she hadn't given money for the last several years. This is back in the 60s. I don't think that much happens anymore, but that was a time that they were very hardcore about it. And my dad became very angry and they never went back to church. Well, that was when I was probably 10. And so at that point, I learned not to go to church. And I can't say that I was ever devout, but, I still, when I walk into a church, I still there's something that goes on. And I'm not really sure I understand it. The best part of the Catholic Church for me is when you turn to your neighbor and say, "Peace be with you." To me, that's the whole reason you're there. So I have that background. But then, I became a little not sure, lost, not sure what I wanted to do. I tried a couple different churches. I went to a Unitarian church, then I didn't go to church at all. And, and then I thought I was an atheist, and maybe I am. And, I went through all that kind of stuff that many people do. I don't want to say everybody, that many people do. And I got to a point in my life where I started to realize that much of what my spirituality for me would come from within. And somebody else wasn't going to tell me. Some church wasn't going to tell me. Some, great thinker wasn't going to tell me. I might learn something from them, but it's all going to come from in here. It took me many, many years to figure that out. So I have come to a point where when I need to really consider those kinds of things, I go inside. But what I learned with Walks with Sam was that there's a lot from the outside, if you let it in, that can feed what's already there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of us, it's already there. It's just a matter of discovery.
Yep.
Yeah. So for me, and I am not in any way an expert, and I don't claim to be. I don't claim to be with this book. But what I do say is that my experience of opening my eyes up to the world through the eyes of this dog on these contemplative, walks, was feeding my soul. There's no question of that for me. I didn't realize at the time. I didn't go to do this to do that. I wouldn't have called it a pilgrimage in any way, but it became one in a way, in a small way. It allowed me to see things and think about things in a way that I hadn't before. And I think when you read the book, you'll see that there are moments. And I mean, I talk about lawn ornaments in the book, and you're like, what? But
yeah.
Have you ever really looked at a lawn ornament?
Yeah, yeah. And the crazy guy, I love the particular chapter about the neighborhood crazy guy.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you just want to tell us a little bit about, because that's pretty poignant, because you kind of judge this guy by his lawn ornaments, which I thought was interesting. And that's a kind of a metaphor, is it not, for
I think so.
How we view one another and make judgments and pass judgments and become even critical of each other through just the simplest things,
right.
and appearance. So yeah, tell us a bit more about.
I even hesitate to still call him crazy guy. It feels almost disparaging in some way.
Yeah, but we identify with that. We understand the state of mind that you went into that.
Right. For. But there's a gentleman in our neighborhood here who, he's just a little off center. Some of the things he put in his yard were just crazy. A blown up whale from a pool toy. And he would just like put them around an empty chair, a bike with an axe in a tree, just all kind of very odd, not in any way disturbing really, but just odd. And every day you would walk by, there'd be something different, or there'd be chalk messages written on his walkway that were just like nonsensical. So it was easy to call him crazy guy
Mm-hmm.
through that, prism, that little lens. But there was a moment in time where I needed to trim some trees in my backyard, and his trees kind of float over into my yard. And the law here in Illinois and in the US says that you can cut someone else's trees if they're in your space. But and you can just go ahead and do that. But I just felt like the neighborly thing to do is to go talk to them, say, hey, I'm going to trim these. I hope you don't mind. So I tried to contact him and I couldn't contact him. Then I started to realize by walking to his door a few times over and over that maybe he wasn't as crazy as I thought, and he wasn't any crazier than the rest of us. And that's what helped to see that. And frankly, I kind of had this conversation with Sam, and that's where Sam comes in. That Sam was my sort of my therapist, talking with her about like, what am I okay? Am I doing the right thing with this guy? Am I judging him? And and Sam kind of helped me through that in a way. And I learned very quickly, and I don't think it's not a great revelation, but we all make judgments. It's a human thing. We do it out of one or two little moments. We make a judgment call of somebody when we first meet them. Mm-hmm. And the reality is we have to put that aside. He turns out to be just a fine guy. I mean, he's okay. He's just different than the rest of us. And that doesn't make him crazy. It just makes him different.
We're all different, are we not, David, actually? And that is the big lesson, I think, that we learn. The crazy guy, who we'll call the normal guy then, like the rest of us, is on his own journey. And one of the things that the dog probably teaches us at that point is that we have to respect where people are now, right now. And we have to, as humans, we can understand that things have happened in the past that have brought us to being who we are today, and that we can all learn really from the lesson that we are connected to each other. You were actually physically connected to this guy because of trees overlapping your boundaries, but actually that's also a metaphor, is it not, for all of us in life. We, as Carl Jung said, through the collective unconscious that we are all part of, we are connected to each other and we are part of each other, but we're also part of the universe at large. So we are connected to the animal kingdom. So we're all connected to Sam, and like St. Francis said, brother sun, sister moon, and would preach to the birds. If nobody else was listening, well, he'll preach to the birds, and no problem with that whatsoever. So it's an important lesson, because one of the things I love about your book is that is the openness that you had to learn from Sam and Sam's view of the world. And was that something which you felt Sam was participating in? Did you ever get a sense, a moment when, this dog's reading my thoughts? Or is this a pure David Berner invention here? I mean, was there ever a spooky moment? Did anything ever happen where you thought, maybe this dog?
I don't know if it was spooky, but I have to tell you, my stepdaughter told me the other day that she thought I was a little bit off my rocker, that I thought that that Sam was sort of, we were having this telepathic moment.
Yeah.
And she was kidding me, but I understand where she was coming from. But I do think, in a way, Sam and I connected. I think we all connect with other living things some way. I don't understand it. but I do think we do. And how many times have you heard people who garden, who talk to their flowers, and they swear that the flowers do better because they talk to them, right? Or play.
Yeah, guilty
Right.
as charged. Yes.
Right. So if there's so many people who do that and the result is a good thing, any scientist would tell you, well, that's enough data to tell you something's there, right? I mean, they would just say that.
Yeah.
So in a way, for me, with Sam, the more that I walked with her, the more that I felt that maybe there was something there. I mean, is she understanding my words? No, she's hearing the Charlie Brown blah 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 thing. I'm sure she's not really hearing me, but dogs certainly sense when you're frightened. They certainly sense when you're angry.
Yep.
They certainly sense when you're playful. They know that. They sense it. Maybe they don't label it in that way necessarily, but they sense those things.
Yeah.
When I come home every day from somewhere, when I'm out someplace and I come home and Sam greets me, she does the same thing every time. She jumps up and down. She runs and finds an old shoe, brings it to me as a gift. She does the same thing. She doesn't do that because there's some connection.
Yes.
No question. So to answer your question, I think there was something going on there. I don't pretend to understand it, though.
No, I don't think we're meant to understand it, but I agree with you. I think it's there. I mean, there are in the world that I study in, which is the world of alchemy, the alchemy philosophers of the past, the ancient past, their whole philosophy was based on their belief that we are all connected. In fact, we're not just connected to living things, we're also connected to inanimate things as well. And this thing they call the Prima Materia that flows through us all and flows through all things is what Carl Jung picked up on when he was talking about archetypes. So he believed that archetypes don't just live in human existence, but they exist in light, in matter, and this is where we all come from and where we all go to. And I've heard lots of people, and I'm sure this is one of your observations as well, that one of the things about dogs in particular is that if you care for them, there is a faithfulness, there is almost an unconditional faithfulness that will come from animals who sense that they are being loved and cared for by a human. Is that your experience with
Yeah, I've had
lots of dogs?
Excuse me 1 second. We have some construction going on across the street, and I hear a saw, so I want to make sure I get the door closed.
Yeah. Okay.
The faithfulness is absolutely true. I think that they sense that. I mean, I think all living things do. Our siblings, the humans, certainly understand when someone is treating them well and not, and that there's a better connection when we all become, as you were talking about before, more compassionate, and understanding where people are at that moment. And so I think that's definitely true about dogs. I mean, I've had dogs all my life. My very first dog was a collie that my grandfather gave me when I was a year old. So dogs have always been around me. And I've tried, and my parents also tried very hard to be very compassionate with dogs, be very caring. And we never had a bad dog. I don't remember ever having a bad dog. We had all good dogs who were loving and caring and, relatively obedient to what we needed, at least, our own human necessities. So I hope that answers your question. I think
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to just briefly talk about transformation.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about your Catholic background and how you realize that the wisdom and the entry to truth has been coming from within. That's where you found truth in your life. Has there ever been a particular event that you can cite when there was a transformative moment, a kind of a eureka moment? Was there ever a time when you thought, you know what, I think I've entered into a different dimension of understanding of love and truth in life?
It's when you first started to ask that question, I'm like, oh, goodness, do I know a particular moment? And I really should know this moment. And I really don't know how to categorize it, but I know how I felt. And it was absolutely an otherworldly. I was on another journey. I was on a long cross-country road trip with a good friend of mine and my two sons. And we were in near the Grand Canyon in the American West. And we came off the Grand Canyon, seeing the Grand Canyon. We came down a hill and we entered this area that's known as the Navajo Nation. And it's a section that covers different states in America that is owned by the Navajo Native Americans. It is considered federal land in a way, but the Navajo have autonomy. So we came down there, we were coming around a corner, and we pulled into this little spot to stop the car and be able to walk a little bit. Now, to give you a sense of what this looked like here, if you've seen an old John Wayne movie where he's riding the horse all by himself out into the, moving away from everyone, and it's the lonely moment for the cowboy. That sort of scene, that reddish open space, incredible open space. That's what it was like. I got out of the car and I stood at a fence there and I started to cry. I cried hard. And I said, guys, I have no idea what's going on. I said, this is one of the most beautiful places I have ever, I'm thinking about it now, I'm starting to tear up. The most beautiful places I've seen in my life. And I had been in many places. And it wasn't just the beauty of the vision, but there was something else going on.
Yeah. And
I have never felt like that before. Not in a church, not in a spiritual moment, not before a therapist, nothing. Not at Christmas time with my kids, not quite like that. And strangely enough, probably coincidence, but strangely enough, it started to drizzle a little bit. And the drizzle created a rainbow. And there was a rainbow. And I said, now something's telling me something here. Well, then there was a double rainbow. I've never seen a double rainbow until that day. And I just turned to my kids and I said, you're going to have to carry me home. I said, this is overwhelming to me. There was something there about the open space, the land, nature, something otherworldly, something deep inside. It was all coming together at that moment.
And it was also a sacred space for a particular group of people, of course, as well.
Yeah. So it was an incredible moment for me. I'm still not sure I understand it. I don't necessarily try to understand it. I just accept it for what it was.
I would be bold enough to say that sounds like an alchemy moment to me, if you know the story of The Alchemist.
Yes.
For those of you that have not read The Alchemist, the main character, Santiago, goes into the desert, just like you. And he has those moments where he begins to commune with the desert, and he begins to, the desert, what it called the language of the world, begins to communicate with him. And that is a part of a spiritual awakening. Did you find after that experience that you saw the world differently? Did it give you a different perspective?
I think I have. I can't say that I've been, in every sense of the word, transformed by it, but it does certainly make me reconsider and think about things differently from time to time. I screw up. I'm not always this thoughtful.
Welcome to the club.
You know what I mean? But I really do think after that moment, I do pause a little bit more. And maybe this is partly maturity, but I think I'm a lot better in my later years of accepting that I've done something not so well and being okay with it, or been wrong about something and been okay with it. I think that comes with age. I think it comes with wisdom, time. Not so sure it's about that moment, but maybe it is. Maybe it is. But I do think that, I reflect on that moment more than any other moment that I can remember.
And you've still got a great visual picture of it, which you described
absolutely
really well. Paolo, in one of his interviews with Oprah Winfrey once, said that one of the most sort of greatest blessings any of us can have is that moment where we actually realize that we're alive. We're alive. We're actually part of the world, and the world is part of us. And that's one of the basic principles of alchemy, is that awakening to that realization that we are that alive moment, that we're here, we're an essential part of the universe. And that kind of sounds like one of the things that you have. But I would also hasten to add that I genuinely believe that the spirituality of the Native Americans in that region would have definitely there's something in your journey and being attuned to whatever you were attuned to in that met another element in the universe there.
I think you're right about I've had more so since then a more an affinity toward Native American art, even jewelry. Not that I have tons of it or anything, but I'm more drawn to it than I had been before. So I think there was that connection, and I think you talk about having those spiritual moments and sort of knowing that you're alive in the world, that you're part of it. That happened with Walks with Sam in the book. I think that was part of it too. Sam knows she's here, and I think she reminded me that, like, hey, you're here too, and we're together, and this is a good walk, and you should just enjoy this, And I really think that was part of it too. That's it. It's amazing to me that dogs and really people in your lives, in our lives, who can sort of just say one thing or do one thing or spend a moment, and it makes you reconsider so much. And I think that happened a lot with Sam. Reconsider.
Well, it is a great read. I'm enjoying it. I'm about 2/3 of the way through, David. Thank you for that story. It is great, and it makes us think. And especially, I think, if you are a dog lover or you own a dog, or you've walked somebody else's dog at some point, it's definitely going to resonate with people. So anybody can buy your book or pre-order it right now, actually, on Amazon or any good online bookstore, correct?
Indie Bound is also, it's there. So it's pretty easily found. If you Google Walks with Sam and my name, you'll find it.
Right. And then you've got some other books, of course, which you've had published for a while. If people are into fiction, you've got A Well-Respected Man, which was award-winning. So yeah, lots of David Berner stuff to choose from, which is awesome. Well done. Congratulations.
Your book too. Now you've got me very interested. I obviously did some research before we talked, but I have not read. I'm going to have to do that now.
Bless you. Well, I hope you find it really is. I know just from what we've just said, there's going to be quite a bit of resonating going on there as well. You're going to have to help me with this potion. So it's a bit of a clear liquid at the moment. It's not going too well. What I'm looking for is liquid compassion. There's got to be a couple of ingredients I'm missing here, David. Have you got any offerings that?
Wow. So this is it. This is a potion that needs the elements of compassion. So is the idea that we would drink this liquid and become more compassionate?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah, let's see, something Native American we can throw in there, maybe. I think peyote might be too much, but but maybe on that level somewhere might help matters.
Yeah, it's. From your book, I would say one of the key things is a total acceptance of other people and neighbors in particular, of just where they are.
That's a great thing. I mean, to me, that's really a transformation for anybody. To just learn that, I mean, everybody is on their own little road here. And, sometimes your road is different than theirs, or someplace along the way different than theirs. And that's okay. Then we don't have to be, thank goodness we're not all on the same road. Can you imagine the traffic?
Well, it'd be so boring as well, wouldn't it? If I kept bumping into me all the time, I'd certainly get fed up after a very short time. Have you got a short passage? Is there a favorite bit of Walks with Sam, a couple of paragraphs or anything that you'd like to share with us before we we
hard
wrap this up.
hard time favorite passage. But I do think that there's one part in the book here when I come upon an old church that had been transformed into an Islamic center in our neighborhood, and how there was never any fuss about it. You know, you hear sometimes that there is with these kinds of things, and this just went without fuss, right in the middle of the neighborhood, and it really made me feel good. That's one section, but there's also a couple here about, you know, there's at the beginning of the book, there's a story about Sam with socks that you may have read, but
Yeah.
that was a way for me to start to see why she was doing that sort of thing. So, would you like me to read any of this?
Yeah, just give us a favorite paragraph, because if you're like me, I love to hear an author reading their own work. It's
This is from Walk Number 1. It's called Not Enough Socks in the World.
Okay.
If there's a sock in the house, anywhere in the house, Sam will find it. Sam can't get enough socks. A few days ago, she coughed one up, an entire sock. Men's black dress, swallowed whole. I threw it out. Sam also snatches books. Once she brought me a copy of Thoreau's Walden from a basement coffee table. Other times it was a screwdriver, a small flashlight, underwear, my wife's blouse. Mind you, she does not chew these items necessarily. Not most of them. Instead, she finds them intriguing enough to prance around with them and eventually offer each one to me. Sam's vet says dogs become attached to items their owners have touched. Those items carry the scent, and so the dog holds them close so it can be close to you. It's like a child and his favorite's blanket. Think about Linus. Still, I can't help wonder, on the day when Sam brought me her leash, if she didn't only want to be close to my scent, but also suggested something more.
There you go. And that sets the tone for the whole book. Absolutely. Yeah. David, thank you for writing this book, and thank you for all your work. Your students, I'm sure, are very fortunate to have you as their professor, and I hope they appreciate that. I'm sure they do. Everybody, don't forget, you can pre-order a book, Walks with Sam by David Berner, on any good online bookstore. And together, on behalf of everyone, David, I'd just like to thank you for giving us your time today.
Well, this has been an absolute delight. You're a delight to speak with. I appreciate your thoughtfulness, and I can't thank you enough. Appreciate it.
Pleasure is all ours. Thanks, everyone. Join us again on the next episode of the Alchemy Lab very soon. Thanks.
Thank you.